Welcome to the Adulting Demystified podcast with your host, Odelia Goldberg. In each episode, we'll have subject matter experts discuss things that most people don't know, but probably should. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, ogoldberglaw.com. Now, here's the host of Adulting Demystified, Odelia Goldberg.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining. And today we have with us the one, the only Philip Berry. Now, Philip, when you mentioned to me what it is you do, I was like, we got to get you on this podcast because Philip, for over 40 years, has been working with people to make sure that they're the best versions of themselves in terms of their business and how they interact with their company and their teams, and ensuring that, we have kind of a group effort going. So, Philip, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I'm sure I didn't do you justice in how you kind of do the magic that you do.
Yeah, no, au contraire. I mean, matter of fact, I like how you introduced me because that really does describe the essence of the work that I do, where I do it, how I do it, why I do it. In organizations, I mean, I have a degree, two master's degrees, one in business, but also one in behavioral science. And one of the things that I learned when I went into organizations that individuals really need to not only improve how they are going about the work with the product and customers, but also they need to be able to improve how they're working with others. And they need to improve how they can work together more effectively and efficiently in a way that helps to build community and also in a way that helps the company or organization that they're in to be successful. And I've seen a correlation between, I've worked in profit and not-for-profit organizations. I've worked domestically. I lived abroad in Paris for a number of years. I have worked in over 60 countries around the world, and I can name them. I like to say some people go to places for vacation, but when I was working in those places from the time of the Berlin Wall falling down, where I was working with mergers and acquisitions and helping to develop full-fledged subsidiary operations and teams that were servicing the people in those countries, there's a lot that I learned about people and a lot that I learned about how to be more effective on a cross-cultural basis. So that's sort of a nutshell of why I'm doing this and where I do it and what's important to me.
Amazing. Well, the idea of this podcast is to kind of get subject matter experts to talk about what they know and to share with us because, in my line of work in estate planning, I kind of remind people all day long that the will doesn't avoid probate, that beneficiary forms are super important. Who picks the title company in Broward versus in Palm Beach County, things like that, that really in adulting matters, nobody really understands or really gets involved in. And I figured that probably across all the functional silos, we have, these common misconceptions that people tend to get wrong. And I'm wondering if you can share with us some common misconceptions about your line of work to kind of demystify them and make it more available for people to know.
One of the common misperceptions that I deal with is that individuals feel that if they have gone to college or they've gone to a technical school and they have acquired a degree of success in that profession and in the organization, and they feel, well, I have it all, I've done it, I don't have to do anything differently but continue to do the same thing. The misconception is that people don't feel that they need to change, but they are faced with situations where there might be a new market. There might be new customers. There may be situations where they have to think about rethinking how they approach the work itself because the world is not staying the same. And customers, your competition is not staying the same. And so you cannot address these with the same, the skills and what got you there before is not going to keep you there the next stage unless you think differently about how you are approaching the work. I mean, you may get promoted to a situation. And in fact, I love to work with individuals who, doctors and lawyers and engineers, who are very proficient in their technical areas. However, what may happen is that they are moved to a situation where now they're supervising others. There might be a merger or acquisition that they're involved in. And so they find that the competencies and their capabilities are insufficient to deal with the new challenges that they have. So in a nutshell, the misconception is that people feel that they don't have to change. They can just stay the same, and that's going to make them successful.
Yeah, kind of like, in business school, we all read Who Moved My Cheese? It's kind of like that basic understanding that you got to roll with the punches and you got to, if the universe is telling you, hey, this isn't working out, you got to hear it. So definitely. And, when you were talking, I was thinking about when I was promoted to middle management, was a project manager for IBM for many years. And then I think like 5, 7 years into the business, I actually was promoted to be first level manager. And I hated it. Let me tell you, for a year and a half, it was the bane of my existence because just firing people in general was really hard for me, especially, I had a team of about 35 and it was, back in those days, there were a lot of layoffs. And so, it was a bit challenging. But I remember wondering, like, yeah, I've got this skill set to be a project manager. But do I really have the skill set and the tools to be a manager? And at the time I was only 26. I was fairly young for first line management. But IBM was a really good company and they provided us a lot of the resources. So they sent you to management school and we had, I think at the time it was like 40 hours a year, every year of just continuing education, just in management, the soft skills. So yeah, definitely. Just because you're PMI certified and you could run a project doesn't mean you really have the skills to deal with people and all the complexities that come along with that, for sure. Yeah.
What's so interesting? One connection that I have with you in this area is that I also began my first job at IBM. I
Right.
was working on putting together what you call key punch machines, sorters, and verifiers, and having and putting together a complete system, and then putting those together and then shipping them or different parts of the world.
Right.
But what happened is that system 3 changed along the line. And then you went to system 7. And then you found now we're in a situation where if I look at my iPhone, which has all of the storage, the communication capabilities in my hand, when I needed to fill a whole room in order to enhance the capability that an organization would have in order to deliver that. That's big change. And with AI, that's another big change that's coming about. So
Yep.
change is a constant. Some people feel, well, it's going to be like this, and then this is the way it's going to be. That is the biggest misconception that people have, that it's going to remain the same. And it's not going to remain the same unless you continue to look at things differently.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's interesting. So do you recommend that people continue to hone their skills and continue to build their skill set so that, because how do you know what's coming? Like, how do you prepare yourself for the future?
What's so important is that I remember Alvin Toffler, a futurist, said that individuals need to continue to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Your whole life has to be about looking at a number of issues in a very different way than they are right now. And so you need to continually read. You need to continue to fortify yourself with new learning, so that way you can keep abreast of all of the things that are important to you and also to those that you're working with. So you have to social media, reading, any way that you can continue to cultivate new language, new skills, new capabilities, new learning. One needs to continually feed themselves I call it the continuous feeding of your mind, and which also is going to help with other parts of your body. And
Mhm.
also it's going to help with the interface that you have with people. If you continually feed yourself with new thoughts, what's a new way of doing this? How can I re-look at that situation and turn the ball cube upside down and look at it in a different way? So that way I have a different insight regarding what I'm doing.
I like that. I had an ex-boyfriend that used to say that a curious mind is a brilliant mind. Maybe he got it from somewhere. I don't know. Maybe he invented it. I don't know. But the idea was that curiosity is really kind of non-judgmental, right? You're just curious. You're like, I wonder. And you walk into something without any judgment or any bias, just with the sheer curiosity of what lies in there. And then you're able to kind of learn or unlearn or relearn depending on what it is that's involved. So I think the curiosity aspect is actually somewhat important. Maybe he was right.
No, I think it's important to remain curious. Matter of fact, I look at Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs said that I am just infinitely curious about new ways of doing things. And in fact, I took a lot of the learning that I got from uh, the computer area where I was working at IBM, and then I was working for another company called Digital Equipment Corporation. Doesn't exist anymore. However, there was a lot that I learned there. And then, lo and behold, another company, Apple, came along the way. And it was a whole different way of looking at how we are interfacing with the information that is coming before us. And
Hmm.
so he said, well, let's look at new shapes. Let's look at new type of typing. Let's look at colors. Let's incorporate sound. Let's incorporate um, music. Let's incorporate all of those into a new way of interfacing with the data that we have. So that way it's not boring. We want to make it exciting. We
Mhm.
want to continue to make it a device that people feel enthusiastic about. And so you can see that in the growth of new companies that have coming about in that, not only in the computer industry, but also in other industries.
Amazing. I love that. So, along with staying curious and continuing to feed your skill set, is there any advice that you think would be relevant to someone in the mid 40s, mid 50s? My clients range anywhere from 30 to 90. These are my people. But probably the people that most would want to hear us talk about, careers and, what they could do differently would be kind of in the middle of what's going on. The people that are just entering probably don't know what to ask. And the people that are just leaving are probably asking different questions. So, what about the people that have been in the workforce for, whatever, 20 years or so? Is there anything that you think would be kind of important for them to know or to kind of focus on?
I think that people need to continually look at ways that can help them to interface with and that would make it, that would build their enthusiasm, that would help them to dream more, that would help them to come up with new ways of thinking and working with people, and whatever area you happen to be in. You shouldn't feel this is the only job. I'm going to stay at this job, and then this is it. I'm going to stay at this company, and that's going to be it. And there's nothing else there. So one needs to continually dream and set a vision for themselves that looks at moving to different heights. And it might be moving to different heights and expanding yourself might mean that you say, well, if I'm living, like, for example, I was living in New York City for a long period of time, but then I decided that I wanted to have a career internationally. And so that required me to move to say, I want to work in Europe.
Mhm.
And not only Europe, I want to be able to work in other parts of the world. But in order to do that, I had to learn new languages, and I had to learn how to interface differently with people. And also, I had to get my family excited about that move. And
Yeah.
I tell you, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And so I would say I was able, between myself, my wife, my children, they were able to visualize a whole new way of approaching what the work is that they're doing. And it just opened up a whole new world for us. And I
Mhm.
think that people can see a new world for themselves if they don't just stay bored and stay and says keep if they need to keep themselves excited. And they
Mhm.
need to do it for themselves. They can't rely on other people to do that for them.
I
And
was just
so
gonna ask you, is that something you do? Is that something you do for people? You read my mind. So the
yeah,
excitement has to come within, but do you get them going? Do you say, how do you fit into this? Because a lot of this is self-motivated. How do you kind of drive that passion?
I was, matter of fact, not was, I am working with a client right now, lawyer, very successful in the areas that he's in. And then we said, why don't we tap into another area and see if there's something else there? And that other area happened to be a curiosity about how his skills could be reapplied in a different country. And
Oh,
so we just happened to pick the Philippines. We said, let's pick the Philippines. Why the Philippines? Because they're ripe. There's a business setting that's open and waiting for people to come there. And so net, he in over a took about a year. He developed the business there. He now has about 30 people working for him there, and it's in the legal area. And also, he's helping them with their virtual businesses. And he's totally excited about this. It just opened up a whole new arena for them. And he started by saying, well, should I just go work for another company? I said, you don't have to work for another company. You have the skills to start another company yourself. You don't have to just go somewhere else. Matter of fact, I'm not sure you're going to be happy anywhere else because you have spent so much time in what you're doing. You need to do something in a very different arena. And he's just, not only is he happy, he's making good gobs of more money in what he's
wow,
doing.
what a
So,
success story.
so he's really happy about that. And I like to open up, I like to help people open up new doors for themselves and to say, what if you just happen to do something in this area? How would that work for you? What if you decided that I was working with another individual who is in the investment banking area. So this helped that person to say, well, how can I expand investment banking into a part of Africa where they could use some more work? So we picked South Africa because the southern part of Africa is a lot more entrepreneurial and there's a lot more business that you can develop there. And then we said, well, after that, when you come back to the United States, what are some other areas that you might want to look at? And so he says, well, climate change. Maybe I could do something in the whole area of sustainability. I just spoke with him the other day, and he talked about how much more money he's making in the area that he's in because he is helping to develop and formulate businesses. What happened, in fact, I'll tell you what happened with him when he came back to the United States. He opened up a number, 3 or 4 dry cleaning businesses, and it was in an area, it was right during the pandemic. Who's going to change their clothes and clean their clothes during the pandemic? Nobody. So he actually lost those businesses. So what we did, we helped them to resurrect and say, let's look at another part of the country where you can begin to develop a whole new business and a whole new line of work. And he did that. And now him and his wife, they're driving Teslas.
Professionally, or just that?
Yeah, right. That's right. Maybe, yeah, yeah, maybe you can make some money. Matter of fact, every time I'm taking an Uber or something, I'm taking tests or something like that. But what happened is that it opened up a whole new way of him looking at things,
Gosh.
I'm doing that with a not-for-profit organization that I'm working with, the Louis Armstrong House Museum. So just help them to look at a new way of how they would position themselves from the standpoint of music, how they can can be a force, because you don't only have to do it, the areas that I'm talking about are more in a profit area at first, but in fact, you could do it in a not-for-profit area. You could do it in other areas of sustainability, like music, like art. In fact, working with this individual who decided, well, instead of me just being a marketing person for a one type of firm, let me try to help them so that they can expand and expand to help companies who want to increase their footprint in the art world. And so they're doing a lot of stuff in that area, and number of ventures in that area. I just love working with people. I was talking with a person who was, I'm not going to, I don't want to prolong on this, but I was talking with a person today, and I gave him a copy of my book, which is called "Being Better Than You Believe: 8 Steps to Ultimate Success," which is on. You can get it on any outlet, Barnes and Noble, LinkedIn, whatever, Kindle. But I said to him, "Why don't you just? You're going to be retiring soon from the work that you're in." He's a technical person. And I said, why don't you see what other skills you have based on your background? You were in the Air Force 10 years. Now you're doing this work where you're doing technical work. Let's put that together and develop a new dream sheet for yourself that will help make you more effective in a whole different area. He's so happy about that. I tell you, I'm waiting for him to come back to me when he turns in his retirement papers next year. So that way we can talk about how he can refresh himself and rebrand himself. Everybody has a brand, but they don't always know what it is. But if you can expand yourself by looking at new technical skills, new leadership capabilities, new interpersonal capabilities, that is going to give you more meaning in areas that you hadn't thought about before. There's so much. The world is your oyster when it comes to this. You don't have to wait. Matter of fact, I'm at an age where I'm saying I'm not retired. I'm rewired. I mean, I, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing in different arenas and see how else I can make an application of the skills and capabilities to help people think about something and help them look at their own personal situation in a different way. I'm talking to a person who does my manicure, I do manicures and pedicures and everything. I decided after about 40 some years, let me just give myself a little bit more time and take care of myself. Well, I was one of the things that I did in that business that I went to, 3 people left that business. 2 of them decided that they read my book and decided they're going to go into new areas. Well, that's okay, because what you can continually do is to refresh the operation that you're in and rethink the business that you're in, and you can be innovative in a different way. There are new customers out there. There are new markets out there. The change is something you can decide you're going to go to a whole different world. You don't have to stay in the world, whatever quote unquote world you happen to be in. You can go to a whole different arena, and you can decide that you can do this anywhere. You can move anywhere. You don't have to be a slave. You don't have to be a slave to your past. You don't have to be a slave to what the wherever your parents live, wherever you grew up. That's important. That's historical. So you have to look at that as something that's historical. It's not something that stays with you. The past can be prologue to a new set of areas that you want to go into that can provide something more exciting. That's what I like to do when I'm working with people, to get them excited about those type of things.
Well, your excitement is definitely contagious. I always say that a good speaker is someone that inspires a new thought, right? You hear someone speaking, and it's one thing to just have a nice story, but it's another experience when someone is talking and you're imagining something new that you hadn't thought of before. That to me is a sign of a good speaker. So when you talk, I have a lot of new thoughts. So that makes you a good speaker in my mind's eye. So thank you.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you.
definitely. I love your enthusiasm. It is contagious, and I guess the idea would be that, if you have that attitude of like, curiosity and wonder and excitement, then absolutely things definitely can happen because you're kind of opening yourself up to new experiences and new adventures. So definitely that makes a lot of sense to me. We kind of take that on as children, and then as we get older we kind of get stuck in our routines and in our work and in our lives, and then it's kind of hard to even imagine a scenario of doing something different. We kind of get bogged down in the sameness of it every day. And then there's someone like you to say, no, the world is your oyster. Do what you want. You can go out there and, re-experience it all over again, something totally different. And I think that's very refreshing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so we've only got a few more minutes. I just wanted to see if there was anything else that you wanted to share with the listeners in terms of any other, kind of things that people get wrong or don't really understand when it comes time to their career planning.
One of the things that people get wrong is that they don't really look at the world that they're in and what's going on in the world, and then say, how can I be? It's like watching a train going by. So you're in Manhattan there, you're watching the express train going by, and then you don't say to yourself, how can I be a part of that? How can I get on board? What can I do differently? How, can I make a difference? Who can I talk to? So I believe that people need to establish their own personal, what I call their personal board of directors. I always say, why should CEOs have all the fun? One needs to always be able to find a cadre of people who can give them feedback, who can give them input, and tell them what they're doing well and what they can do differently, and do that in a way that helps you to see yourself. Like, what is a person's brand? A person's brand is not about fluff and advertising. It's how they see themselves and also how others see them. So if you look in the mirror and then you say, can I see myself differently in what I'm doing and where I want to go? And can somebody give me some input on what they see in me now that they like and what they would like to see in me in the future? So use others, develop your board of directors, your personal board of directors, by just enrolling a few people to give you feedback. Be open to learning, be open to discovering more about themselves, so that way you can be able to help others. And I was just working with a person that I worked with in South Africa. I helped him when he was a student. He just got an honorary degree, and he is in charge of personal branding, not just in South Africa, but also throughout the whole African cone. So he does stuff all throughout those areas. And what happens is that he is helping those businesses to reimagine the world that they're in and imagine how they can do something differently. So those, I think that there's just so much out here that we shouldn't be stymied by whatever one might think of all of the things that might be happening in one country or another. And so sometimes people get depressed with that. I say, don't get depressed. Just decide how you can make a difference.
Right.
And you can and decide that that is not going to stop you. Whatever is happening there, don't let that be your barrier. Let that be something that motivates you, and find a new way, whatever it might be, and get excited about that new way. That's
Yeah.
what I think people should do.
I love that. Me personally, I don't know that I have a board of directors, but I do have a dissenter. And he's another lawyer. And if you're watching, know who you are. And we talk, not often, but whenever we talk, he tells me I'm doing everything wrong. Everything I do is terrible. I'm unethical. I'm going to go to jail. I don't know what I'm talking about. Nothing I do is right. And, I need that. I think, because all through history, kings, presidents, everyone has that one person in the room that's like their job is to say, are you sure you're doing that right? The dissenter. because groupthink is a real thing, So if everyone is nodding their head saying, yeah, that's great, very little actually gets done. So we do need that one person in your life that tells you you're the worst human ever, And I do have that. I call him my dissenter. I talk to him whenever I'm feeling too good, and then he tells me exactly how it is, and it's nice. It's refreshing. So I do keep people around that provide feedback, because feedback is a gift, right? The
Yes,
best gift that someone can give you is feedback on how everything is going. And a lot of times people are very kind and nice, and they don't want to hurt feelings. So to have a dissenter, I think, is important. And there are negative people out there. They're just waiting.
well, exactly. You don't always just need an amen corner. It's people who are always just going to tell you everything that you're doing is you're doing well. But we need to have, but the personal board of directors, we need different things. We need people who can tell us what we're not doing well. We need people who we can go to and cry on their shoulder.
Yeah.
We need people who can give us for the weird things, quote unquote, that we might be doing. Show me what's good in that.
Yeah.
I mean, so don't just point out the bad things, point out the good things, and make all of those people part of your personal board of directors, so that you're not relying on just one source
Yeah.
of information and feedback regarding who you are and what you want to do and how you want to do it. And think about how you can make a difference in the world. People, they go into a job and they say, well, I'm going into this job to make some money. But then what they say, well, outside of that, I want to make a change in the profession. But then if you can get them to visualize, and there's a Japanese method called ikaige, which talks about how can you also say how you want to make a difference in the world. What can you do when you leave? What can you do differently? I was in a master class the other day in South Africa, in fact, and one of the people said, what I'm going to do is I want to just leave my money to whomever. I want to leave empty.
Mhm.
Yeah. What he wants to do is to give away all of his money. That's the contribution that he wants to make. Not just doing it for himself, but
Right.
doing it for others. I love to see people who are able to give back and give to others in a way that they haven't before. Because you know what? You can't take it with you. And despite all of the stuff that Odelia, that you would do people in their estate planning, and I know they can't take it with them. Plan for how you can really distribute it effectively, and make sure you plan for it.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with Uncle Sam, but, there are other people who can benefit even more.
Exactly. Amen. Well, Philip, I really appreciate you coming. I want to give you an opportunity to tell people how they could find you, where they could get more information, because definitely you inspired some creative thinking on my part. I'm sure other people listening want to reach out.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on Facebook. Now, I'm on some of the other mediums, but I'm not on Twitter anymore. But the fact is that my LinkedIn connections and my Facebook connections are pretty robust. And also the book that I have a great website, and just Google, Philip Berry Associates LLC, and you'll see me there. And anytime that you want to talk, anytime you want to chat, anytime you want a different perspective, anytime, and I have a very scientific way of approaching the work that I do with others in this area.
I love that. I love that. So it's not like esoteric, fruity stuff. It's real paper, pen to paper. That's
Oh
amazing.
yeah, I like to get down and develop an actual plan for people. I mean, I
Oh,
develop what I call a strategic personal branding plan.
mm,
So that way people are able to see, to visualize what they want to do. And then we talk about the specific initiatives and steps that must be taken in order to get there. So I like to talk about A, this is where you want to go. B, okay, what does it take? What has to happen? What do you have to do differently? And who needs to be involved in this journey?
is a big part of what you do identifying where people are going? Because I can imagine most people don't really know where, you know, what they want to do when they grow up.
And that's what I love, helping people to identify what their vision is.
Gotcha.
And as they begin to think about what the vision could be and what they could do differently. What is it that you wish that you had done, but you didn't do? Well, what was it about that really excited you? What really made you turn on? How can we turn that into something now that can refresh you as you're looking about the future again, looking at the past?
Amazing. I love that. Well, Philip, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. You inspired me, and I'm sure you'll inspire quite a few folks. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing everything that you know with us.
Well, thank you very much for involving me in this. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed this tremendously, and a lot that I got from being able to use you as a mirror where I would talk and then I look back and what did I say? And okay, well, what did I learn from what I just said? What am I learning from her question to me? Which was very good. What do I need to understand about that I didn't understand? So you provided a lot of insight. I thank you so much for the opportunity for being able to do this.
You've been tuning in to the Adulting Demystified podcast with your host, Odelia Goldberg. You should never get legal advice from a podcast. Please don't do anything stupid and ruin it for the rest of us. You deserve to have your own legal advice from a legal professional. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, ogoldberglaw.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.